So, as you were just alerted to everybody, we are recording this session. So, a copy will be shared back to you afterwards. We give it to Blair and to Charles River Center so that everybody knows. This is our third and our last session in what we're doing for workshops. This one, we call it All About Able. Those are the 529A accounts. And we're going to cover a little bit on supplemental needs, special needs trusts as well, sort of how these two strategies, devices interact, what one does that the other doesn't do, and so on and so forth. So that's what this is about. This session is all about ABLE. If you haven't seen us, haven't watched any of the previous presentations, I suggest you go back, ask Charles River how to access them, how to get them, because we did a couple other presentations over the last couple of months. But just to introduce us, my name is Tom Alessi. I have been in financial services for 27 years. I am an investment advisor. Those letters after my name let you know that I am a certified fiduciary. Unlike the people on TV that tell you they're a fiduciary, I'm actually a certified fiduciary. My co-presenter this evening, Craig, can you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So I'm Craig Richardson. I've been an investment advisor. I've been doing this a little over 24 years. And what I specialize in helping people, individuals and families get a better handle on their finances and have a better relationship with their money.
And Craig will be chiming in as we go along. Just a little housekeeping as part of this. There's also a chat box. So if you have questions as we go along, please feel free to drop them in. Craig will make sure that he's on top of that as we're going through. If we don't get to it during the presentation, we do hang out at the end. So if you think of something and you want to ask it, then feel free when we get to the end of it as well. Real quick, who we are at the Moody Street Group. We are not located in Waltham, as our name would give you the indication of. We're actually in Newton. We're right on the border. I mean, literally, the front of the building's in Newton, the back of the property's in Waltham. But what we do is we have, for the past, since the agency's been around, we dedicate a portion of the firm in what we call the Special Needs Resource Network. That's trying to support families with a child who's differently abled or has a disability. And we connect with and do education with a lot of organizations, community support groups like Charles River Centers, the state of Massachusetts, throughout the region, throughout the area.
Mhm.
All right, we're getting into this, Craig. This is all about Able, right? So this is where we're going to go because this has been taking everything sort of sideways. So real quick little history, as we get into Able accounts, this idea and conversation that does come up with families, Craig, is about, well, I have a supplemental needs trust. Why do I need Able? Or
Right.
I'm opening an Able account. Why would I need a supplemental needs trust? Since they essentially both do the same thing, which is protect the child, protect the adult, whoever it is, their ability that they are entitled to and qualified for these benefits
Hmm.
protects any assets that they have from counting against them.
Correct. Yep.
However, they operate under very different rules, and that's why we want to go through this and make sure we get a little bit of that detail. So, ABLE, real quick of the history, ABLE stands for Achieving Better Life Experience. This bill actually went into effect 2014. So it's been in the books for 12 years, except for the first accounts, Craig, didn't come into the books until 2016. So just over a decade ago is when the first accounts came into play. And
Hmm.
that really is sort of the whole conversation because at the time when the bill was passed, they did not make it mandatory. It didn't say, hey, we passed this thing, you have to do this, state of Massachusetts. They left it up into the hands of whoever was running things and deciding, and not a lot of states jumped on board. In
Right.
fact, back then, I want to say there were like five or six. And at the time when the bill went into play, you had to live in the state where the ABLE account was housed. And Massachusetts was not one of them. Massachusetts didn't come on board until after legislation updates and other pieces passed
Hmm.
later in 2017 and so on. So didn't really come here. It hasn't been around in Massachusetts, maybe 8 years, I think, Craig, at maximum.
Yeah, probably. Yep. Yep.
As you can see right now, though, it's pretty much widely adopted. It's 4 states, but I think it's 3 states plus the District of
Well,
Washington, D.C. that doesn't have one. But there are, as of the last count, this would have been the end of last year, 235,000 ABLE accounts have been opened in the country. There's 3.1 billion now sitting in those accounts.
mhm.
The average account, because they didn't have an update for 2025, we only have the update as of 2024, but it gives you the average account balance there is about $11,000. That makes sense to us because we have always advocated and always suggested to everyone that ABLE is meant to be spent. This is
Mhm.
not a long-term big projection savings vehicle. This is a, hey, I want to go out and get a pizza type of thing. I want, to spend on an Xbox game or a PS5. I don't know, remember what Craig's favorite is. He always throws me off with this. But whatever a video game choice is that you want to buy, that's what this is for. It's not for that long-term savings. And we'll get into that when we talk about the difference between this and a trust.
Sure. And that's great to see 235,000 because I remember when we started doing this and it was like 50,000, a
Right.
100,000. Yeah, so it's fantastic that people are really taking advantage of this now.
Yeah, and in fact, in the last 3 years, the numbers have almost, like Craig just mentioned, have literally almost doubled.
Hmm.
But it's just the nature of the idea and the hey, getting families aware of what ABLE can do and what is it for.
Hmm.
Um, so really the whole idea and the reason it was put in place is because, as we had talked about in the previous presentations, those government benefits, while they are a staple and they are definitely something that should be, if the diagnosis is there and your child is qualified, they're entitled to them to take them, but they are really basic living needs only. That's
Hmm.
really what they're meant to do. And we're talking, when we say that, Medicaid here, Mass Health, if you're in the Commonwealth, SSI or SSDI, that's what we're talking about there. And housing is another one. We'll get into that when we get to the end on this. But what they realized was, hey, we need to find a way that we can offset or supplement. As you look at the bottom, it's not supplant their other benefits, but supplement. Add the ability to have additional monies to spend, Craig.
Yeah, because like you said, these other resources are fantastic for people who don't have the ability, but it's really limiting as far as anything beyond basic needs. So this really allows you to have a somewhat normal life as far as spending money goes
Right.
when you have that available.
Yeah, and that's really what ABLE is about. That's really the sort of nutshell. So, how does this work? ABLE account, as of this year, 1/1/2026, they finally changed the law. They changed it because it used to be you had to be under 26. The diagnoses had to be occurred or done before age 26. They just changed it. They've made it 46. So that's brand new legislation as of 1/1/2026, means that so long as the diagnosis is done before age 46, you're eligible to open up account, right? So you have documentation that just says, yes, we have a medical diagnosis, and this is why we're eligible for this account.
Hmm. Yeah, this one's fairly easy to open, unlike trying to get your SSI or SSDI benefits.
Correct. Right. And so here's the thing, and one of the things we talked about before with this is that the account is established by the beneficiary. So the owner of the account is the beneficiary. In this case, if we're talking to parents of a child, that means the child is the owner and the beneficiary of this account. In some cases, that beneficiary may not be capable of opening the ABLE on their own. You
Hmm.
do have the ability as either a legal guardian or as the parent to go through and do what is known as a limited power of attorney. Almost every single one of them have them available now on the site, because that's the thing, Craig, is that it's hey, we understand the beneficiary, the owner of this account may not be eligible to do it. If you're a parent who's doing it on their behalf, here's the form to say you have limited power of attorney to do that.
Right. That way, like I said, if they do have something like, autism or, Asperger's or some other kind of disability that way where they can't, handle that part of it, the parent can set that up and it still benefits them.
Correct. Right. So just know, don't let that stop you in terms of saying, well, wait, how does that work? And one of the key factors, and we'll go through a lot of the key factors with ABLE, but there can only be one account because the owner is the beneficiary, can't have more than one ABLE. So that's the reason this limited power of attorney comes into play.
Hmm.
Right. So the key fixture, as Craig just said, they're very simple, very easy because it's all online. There's no paper. You can't go to some place and open an Able account. It's all done online. You do not have to reside in the state that's offering it. So you can pick and choose. I will tell you here in the state of Massachusetts, I blanked. We were doing one last week. I completely blanked on the name. It's attainable. That's the
Uh,
529 Able in Massachusetts. It's called attainable. You can view it, get information on it at the Mass Education Finance Authority. That's MEFA, MEFA.org. Attainable is the 529. It's sponsored by Fidelity. If you don't like Fidelity, you can go look at another state because Vanguard, American Funds, everybody's got them. Just depends on the state that they're in, what's available. You don't have to live there. Earnings grow tax-free. Everything is tax exempt when pulled out for the beneficiary. That's what they're entitled for. Most of them, Craig, will give you a debit card. So the
mhm.
ability to spend with a debit card, which can just show these were expenses that were done by the beneficiary for their behalf. And
So you
that
have access too.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then the one on the bottom there, that it comes up every now and then, and it's funny. Just had this conversation with a family last week that the grandparents had opened 529 college savings plans for the children. And
Hmm.
this is a great thing for anybody who's dealing with 529 and education. One of the things we subscribe to and tell everybody about is put it in Nana's name because it's just a little sidetrack for you because it's what's known as the grandparent loophole now because they were never asked about any money in Nana's name, whether the funds are being used or not used.
This
And
is for
so,
college planning, is correct? Doesn't make
right.
it clear. Just in case you don't know what a 529 account is, right?
Yeah, so that was so the college savings plan. But anyway,
Hmm.
this family, so their grandparents of the child had set them up for all their grandkids, and they were like, "We're not sure the kid's going to go to higher education." And I'm
Hmm.
like, "Well, what you can do is you have the ability now to transfer the money in a 529 traditional college savings plan to a 529 Able account with no penalties." So this is an important thing. So if in case that happens and you're in that situation or you've done some planning and put some money in an educational account and thought, well, what am I going to do now? The kid may not go to higher ed. Know that that money can be moved over to Able.
This comes up a lot. Like I'll talk with people who have a child who's, especially, under 18 years old, and they want to put away for college, but they're just not sure if they're going to be able to do it or not. And they don't want to take the opportunity away, but they don't know if they should save for it. So this is a fantastic opportunity to kind of play that fence or hedge that bet that if they are able and capable, and I know a lot of kids who actually do are on the spectrum or have autism who do go to college and do get degrees. I mean, because they're not necessarily limited in that factor. Maybe it's just a social issue. So this is a great way to be able to put that away. And if for some reason they can't, the money still gets used for their benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. See, we underlined it for the boldness of that, it's an important feature. So I forgot about that. See, like we were
Yeah.
all ahead of that. Right. So here's the thing, even though it's owned by the beneficiary, anybody can contribute to it. Right. So the money that's in does not count as a resource. So when they ask you how much money do you have, up to $100,000 inside Enable is not counted as a resource.
Hmm.
We're going to talk about how that money gets in there in the next slide and the ways around that and all of that stuff. But just know it's not seen as money in the individual's name. It's just like money in a trust. So how much can be contributed? So here's where we get into the sort of the rules of this. It's the gift tax exclusion. So whatever the gift, unless they change the policy going forward here for the past, whatever number of years this has been in play, it has always been whatever the gift tax exclusion, that's the maximum amount that be contributed by whatever number of people. If one person puts 19,000 in, nobody else can put any money in that year because it's 19,000 is the maximum that can go in. I
Hmm.
will tell you, there's stuff online. Be wary of this. The stuff that says different numbers. It's the gift tax number, which is 19,000 this year.
Yeah.
Same thing with the guideline for the individual. I'm sorry, Craig. Go ahead.
Oh, no worries. I was just going to say, since we started doing this, keeps creeping up. So you got to keep track of what number that number is too. Yep.
Right, right. But it's also that if if you just Google and stuff, sometimes it's not correct. I ran into that. I was looking at some stuff and I'm like, wait, that number's not right. What's this about? So just pay, just follow that it's the gift tax exclusion. The other part is that the individual, the owner of the account, is able to then contribute on their own
Hmm.
up to a certain amount if they are not a participant in a corporate retirement plan. If they're working someplace and they're making a contribution to a corporate retirement plan, they cannot contribute to ABLE. Just so we're clear on that. But if they're
Hmm.
not putting away money, and especially if they're in their 20s or early 30s, because every person we talk to, we can never get them to contribute to the retirement plans anyway. So they can put money into an ABLE so they can work and be able to have money set aside where it's not going to count against them. And this is a big factor because it means, Craig, a lot of people now have the ability, they don't have to worry about going out and getting a job and working because that's what they want to do.
Well, it's a couple great benefits here. Number one, it allows those who are capable to actually go and work without having to knock themselves off benefits because they can put that money into the ABLE account. And the other thing is, even if, let's say you're not getting any government benefits, but you have a diagnosed disability, this is like allowing you to have a Roth account that you can access at any time.
Right.
So it's another benefit there too. And I got a quick question in the chat box.
Sure.
What kind of documents do you need to prove disability? As far
Sure.
as I know and what I've been told, all it is a doctor's diagnosis.
Correct.
And they're not going and auditing these things. Like once you set it up, send in the information, it kind of just goes through.
Yeah.
So I can't say they won't do a little bit tighter in the future as now millions of people jump into the thing, but right now that's the case.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty much what it is, and going through it. You see the distribute. We're going to talk about the QDE, the qualified disability expenses. We're going to talk about that in a couple of slides. Just know that just means whatever the beneficiary is spending the money on, so long as it falls under this QDE thing, there's not any penalties or problems or taxes or anything. And again, it has no effect on any of the means tested. That's the Mass Health or Medicaid, SSI or SSDI benefits.
Hmm.
SSI, this question came up in a previous presentation, or maybe it's been the last one for this about Craig, the means testing rule, how much is allowed a
Hmm.
person to have. And just so we're clear that that's $2,000 that someone is allowed to have as an asset.
Yep.
The trigger here is that one of the things with able accounts, like if it gets over the 100,000, that's the limit we talked about, that the benefits get suspended. They don't get disqualified. There's a big difference here is suspension is just now I just I spend the money down and I'm under it. I can turn the benefits back on. I don't have to requalify, which is what happens when I get disqualified. If I get a bundle of money in and now all of a sudden I'm disqualified for my benefit. I have to put this money someplace else.
That's correct. Yep. Oh, just so you
Right.
know, too, just as SSI does have a limit as far as means testing. SSDI, however, does not.
Right.
Just so, just to be clear, because we were saying both of these two things. One's means tested, the other one is not means tested.
Right. Well, so I meant Mass Health. I meant Medicaid and SSI. So thank you
Yeah,
for
yeah, I understand what
clarifying.
you're
Yeah,
saying.
no,
Was
no,
that the last thing we were
yeah,
talking
no,
about?
no, no. I get it in terms of going through that. So I appreciate that, and hopefully
Yeah,
the
no
audience
worries.
caught that as well. But yes. Um, So those qualified disability expenses, right? So pretty much it's a broad range, pretty much anything that the beneficiary, the owner, the child, in the case we're talking to parents, needs for their living, they can pretty much use it. And it's a very, very broad range, from basic living to food to wellness to assisted technology. It's an ongoing, there really isn't too much unless, hey, we're trying to say, the child is taking everybody on a vacation and is paying for everything. Then that's not really going to work. Them going on vacation is okay, but not if they're going to then treat everybody as part of it. That's not going to be an okay thing.
Yeah, building an in-ground pool for the family might not be the best use, you know.
Correct, right. That may not pass muster as far as going through that.
I need to drive them to work in a Mercedes. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
that kind of
The
stuff like that.
car, the car could be okay, but that's a different conversation.
All right, a Ferrari. I mean,
Yeah,
maybe that
yeah,
might change
correct.
it.
So one of the things that does come up is this payback provision. So we're going to talk about the trusts in a second. We mentioned it when we talk about trusts in the other presentations that Medicaid, if there is money in the ABLE account and the owner passes away, Medicaid can step in and say, "Hey, we want to get paid back for the benefits that we paid out for monies that are left in here." And
Hmm.
one of the things with this, and and Craig and I are pretty, do stress this for a lot of families. Don't let this stop you from opening up the ABLE account because the ABLE account is really meant to be spent now. Like we said, the average account balance was $11,000. It's not a lot of money. It's not intended to be a lot of money. It's intended to be money that is spent now in the immediate time as the child is growing, getting older, doing stuff. That's what an ABLE account is really meant for.
And a question I got in the chat box that's relevant to that is, can the funds be used for clothing, groceries, everyday expenses? And the answer is yes. That's the whole purpose.
Correct.
Hmm.
Yes. Can even be used, as I mentioned, for those Xbox games or whatever video games they want,
Movie
because that's
tickets.
that's
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
that's their entertainment. They can certainly use it for that as well. It's a qualified expense. It's entertainment, but yeah, we would rather they spent it on something better, but that happens.
To them, right. That's the fact is you have the ability to spend on what you want. So it's not a
Right.
limitation. Yep.
And the other side of it is that as we get into the doom and gloom with some of this stuff, but some of that those final expense can be
Hmm.
taken out before Medicaid steps in. So burial expenses, final expenses, that can be paid for out of the ABLE account as well. So again, for families, we said don't let this be the trigger that says, wait, I'm not going to do it because of that payback provision.
Right.
All right, so a little bit about supplemental needs trusts, or otherwise called special needs trusts, so just the idea here is that the whole conversation is the reason the trust gets set up is because we want to put, as parents, money set aside for our child for later on in life, where that money is not going to affect their means tested benefits that they are entitled to and qualified to receive. That's the conversation here with this trust. This is monies that I am putting in. I, as a parent, am no longer around, Craig. That's future money that's meant for after I'm gone down the road.
Hmm.
The grantor, beneficiary, trustee. So grantor, that's the person who's setting the trust up. In most cases, that's the parents, could be grandparents, the person who's setting up the trust. Beneficiary is then the generally the child in that situation. Trustee is the person who's overseeing the responsibility to make sure the funds are distributed in such a way that does not cause any problems for the beneficiary or to trigger a reduction or a complete disqualification of their benefits that they're receiving.
Hmm. Yep.
The different types of trust. There are two different types of trust. We went through this last time in estate planning, real quick high level for you. First party trust, third party trust. We're going to start with the third party trust because that's the most common. As parents, that's the conversation you're having with an attorney. You're going to an attorney, you said, "Hey, we're thinking about doing this." They're talking to you about a third party trust. You are the grantor, you are the third party setting it up on behalf of your child who's the beneficiary.
Hmm.
Anybody can fund into that. A first party trust is just what it sounds like. you're just like the able accounts. This is how the able accounts sort of built themselves off the same chassis of a first party trust. The beneficiary is the owner. In
Hmm.
that situation, the reason that happens sometimes is maybe there was, some sort of a windfall, whether it was an inheritance, an unforeseen consequence. Another conversation I had there's just a couple of this. What day is today? Today's Wednesday. It was Monday. I just had this conversation. I asked
Wednesday
you
all
about.
day today.
Yeah, I know. God bless, but this was a family where the grandparents had set up custodial accounts
Hmm.
for the children, and one of the children has a disability. And so
Right.
now they're going to inherit this custodial account when they turn 18. Why does they want to start, qualifying for benefits? And so it's
Hmm.
an unforeseen consequence that does happen out there. So it's some of the logistics of like, how do we do, what do we do in terms of going around it? But in some cases, the child would then say, well, I got to take this money and I got to put it into a first party trust. So it doesn't count against my benefits now.
Yep.
And the problem with the first party trust is that the trustee is mandated that these can only be used for basic living expenses. There's not a lot you can use the monies in a first party trust for.
Yeah. And the other thing too is when we talk about children, we're not talking about just children under the age of 18. I have a case I'm working with just the same thing on Monday, with a parent who was like 85 years old who passed away and her children are all in their 60s,
Right.
right? So one of them has a disability and they're trying to figure out, everything passed into a trust, which is great, but now they're trying to figure out distribution. So this is something that affects the child at any age in the future.
Correct. Right. Multi-generational in terms of what you're dealing with, but it's that sort of planning and thought that has to be done in terms of going through it. So when you're again, when you're dealing with a first party trust, there's really no age limit, so you don't have that age limit like you do with the able. So anybody can open one.
Hmm.
It's established by the individual. You can have more than one. So this is why it's a little bit different than an able account. The disadvantages is we strongly suggest that you have an attorney draft this for you because there's definitely legal that needs to be done. It's not great for just a small chunk of money like 5 or 10 grand because the costs and what happens there, it's very, very limiting in terms of it. And that same Medicaid payback provision applies to first party trusts as does to able.
Yep. Yeah, yeah. I would
So,
strongly suggest, before you go, I'm sorry.
yeah,
I would just strongly suggest if you do look for an attorney to do this, you want someone who does specialize in doing special needs trusts because they don't all do it.
right.
Most attorneys will do trusts, but they don't necessarily do special needs trusts. And there's a lot of nuances that, a lot of attorneys just aren't astute on because they don't do it
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah, no, it's a great point in terms of making sure that you're dealing with somebody who's got a specialty that they've dealt with this, that they understand, how to deal with the courts and what the courts are going to be asking for and what they're going to be looking for.
Exactly. Yep.
All right, so now it's the third party supplemental needs trust and versus an able account. Because this is what most families are dealing with. This is the sticky point. This is well, wait, if I set up this trust, why do I need an able? Or if I have able, why do I need this trust? And so, you can see money that's sitting in an able account, it grows tax-free, not the case with a special needs trust. In fact, we had that conversation that a lot of times in, retirement accounts wind up in a special needs trust because it's just everything gets given there and that's money that has to be taken out and taxed.
Yeah.
Um,
Not
you
tax
know,
usually at the best rates either.
correct, right? So, the trustee in a special needs trust oversight, absolutely, this is what it's allowed, it's not allowed, you can do this, you can't do that. So a trustee controls distributions out of a supplemental needs trust. A 529 account, it's the beneficiary, it's a debit card. The beneficiary is controlling that. So, that's one of those, it is what it is.
Yeah, and one of the benefits here too, just because the question came up in the chat box earlier, I was just waiting for the right time to bring it up.
Yeah.
Are contributions to able tax deductible for donors?
No.
No, so it's only you only get a tax deduction for the person who's putting it in?
No, there's no
I,
tax deduction on able.
I thought in the state of Massachusetts you did, there was a credit on that.
No, that's only the 529 college savings plans.
Oh, okay. There's a workaround. You
Yeah.
put it in the 529 and then you move it to the able. That's how you get the deduction.
Right,
Okay.
that's the shell game, right? That's the multiple shell games going on in this whole thing. But yes, the state of Massachusetts, almost every one of them. There isn't, I don't believe there might be one state out there that does, but you have to be a resident in that state. And since we're dealing with Massachusetts here for most of the people, or possibly New Hampshire, that there's no tax deduction. There's no tax benefit either for you or for the beneficiary owner to put money into an able account, at least not yet.
Well,
Right?
the tax benefit is you're getting it all tax, growing tax free and it's coming out tax free. That's the tax benefit.
Correct. Right.
It's like Roth.
Right. Um, you know, again, able account, the distributions can go on, you can take them every day. I mean, it doesn't really matter there. Generally, the money in a supplemental needs trust really looked at as more of a long-term thing. This is more about when you're not around or not able to help or offset or provide for your child. That's when the money that's put inside a supplemental needs trust is really what it's about.
Yeah,
Money
or like
is,
you said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
no, go
step on.
ahead.
I was just saying, or like you said, you have monies that are going in beyond what the able account can hold, right?
Right.
I don't know if you mentioned that already or not.
Yeah, and so the money that's in the trust, like if the individual passes with the money in a special needs trust, third party, it can distribute to contingent beneficiaries. There is no Medicaid payback provision
Right.
in that situation, right? So that doesn't happen in a third party trust.
Got another quick question here.
Sure.
Do able accounts make much money in interest?
So it depends on what you put it in. Able is similar to, if you know, the 529 college savings plans, there are generally investment choices that are set up as portfolios, conservative, moderate growth, depending on what you're trying to do. You don't have as much of a broad range of investment choices like you do in the college savings plans, but generally they're invested. It's in the market. They do have a guaranteed interest, but it's a money market. It's not really paying anything at this point. If you're just thinking of it from those terms of just saying, "Hey, I'm just going to put it in there, let it sit in cash." Again, it's meant to be something that does earn, so
Hmm.
that there's additional monies. That's the whole idea of investing. It's again low cost to set up. Disability onset has been moved to 46. Only one count allowed, 19,000. And again, SSI, uh, that the Medicaid and SSI $100,000 threshold cannot go over that. Otherwise, the benefits are suspended. A special needs trust, it's much more costly to set it up. What did we talk about last time, Craig? Like $4,000 or $5,000 to set one up?
5 to 7, probably. Yeah.
Right? There is no restriction on the age. So it can be set up for anybody at any time. You can have more than one of them. We wind up with this when we deal with folks, families with divorce. Like
Hmm.
sometimes it's like, I'm going to set one up and my ex is going to set one up because we don't want to have any commingling or anything to deal with each other when there's a bad situation that's happened. Any amount can go in. There's no limitation to how much can be put into a trust. And really, it can contain just about anything. We talked about last time with some of the assets, whether or not they make sense, like a house or stocks or retirement accounts going in, but a third party trust can hold them all.
Yeah, I got another question here, and actually, this is kind of interesting because we do a whole webinar just on this and how to fund a trust. But can you fund a trust for a child during your lifetime, or is it something that would be funded by an estate? If so, how you go about that?
So
So,
great question. And that's that trying to solve the issue. That's what we talked about last time with the whole conversation about, well, I'm trying to plan my life. Now I got to plan for their life at the same time. Most times, what we find is that when a third party trust gets set up, it's done on what's known as a future funding basis, meaning that the family's intention is to, at the end of the line, like you talked about with the estate, whatever's left we are going to designate it to go into this third party trust. The
Yep.
problem is a lot of times we don't know what's left at the end because we don't know how long you're going to live and how much you're going to use.
Yeah, I think it'd be a whole offshoot of about 20 minutes trying to go down that road. But we are going to put our contact information in to the chat box and on the screen a little bit later. And if you want to have a one-on-one conversation about that, we're happy to discuss it. There's no obligation, there's no cost, but it allows us to have some time to answer your direct questions.
Right.
So, a great question though.
Yeah. And so the one place where this really comes into play is housing. So if you're in a situation where you believe that your child is going to go into their own housing, whether that's in a group home, whether that's in a different setting, but they're going to go into housing, the housing subsidy, right, may probably not going to pay, especially in this area. If we're staying in Massachusetts, God bless with whatever rent is in terms of dealing with everything, but they're probably going to need additional subsidy for whatever their cost of housing is going to be. And in this case, it just shows you an example of the individual, in this case, Brenda or Belinda or whatever her name is getting 771 a month as her housing subsidy, but the
Mhm.
rent that she has to pay is $1,000 a month. So you're following. So there's a number that's $229, Greg. Is that right? That's the difference.
Yeah, quick math. Yes, you're
Okay.
correct.
So she's got to figure out, I got to have this $229 to make my rent every month, right? So here's the issue. If all of her money is in a supplemental needs trust, she cannot take that money out to pay for the housing need. If she does, if she gets it from the supplemental needs trust, it's going to trigger either a reduction in her housing subsidy or
Mhm.
possibly eliminating it entirely.
Right.
However, she can take money from an ABLE account and pay for the housing subsidy. So, and there's nothing that stops the Supplemental Needs Trust from sending money to an ABLE account to have for spending.
Right.
So if we play the shell game, I've got money in a Supplemental Needs Trust, I got money in an ABLE, rent is due, I can move money over here, the rent can get paid out of ABLE, and all is well and good, and nobody has any problem.
Well, the thing is, we're just trying to explain to you how it works. We're not trying to say why it should or shouldn't make sense. We're
Oh yeah, no, no.
dealing with the government here, right?
Yeah, no, not at all. That's just, it's one of those areas that comes up that says, wait, this, how do I deal with this? One of the reasons for having the both accounts, that's the conversation with families, why it sometimes makes sense. Like we said, one is for spending now, one is
Mhm.
for way down the line when you're no longer around and not able to help out and not able to do anything. That's the supplemental needs trust.
Exactly.
Things to consider, how much money is involved. Not that that's really a factor, but like we said, smaller amounts, 5, 10,000, under 20,000, not really suited to go into a supplemental needs trust. You're probably better off putting it into ABLE.
Hmm.
Now you can only put 19,000 in, so if it's 20, you have to do it in two different time frames. But
Right.
you can still get the money in, and then it's like, okay, it's there and it's not going to affect their individual's benefits.
Right.
Again, same thing with whose money is it? And are there assets in addition to cash? So that's where the house comes into play, like the house, retirement accounts, stocks, things like that. That's where the supplemental needs trust might be better suited. That was the person asking with the estate question, right? Hey, that's stuff that gets funded by the estate because now you're gone, right?
Right.
The Medicaid stuff, that's as they go forward, if they're aging, they're going to fall into that and probably apply for and get mass health. Again, housing is another one of those. But it's one of those, hey, it might make sense. Maybe we as the parents are setting up the supplemental needs trust, Greg, and funding that. And then the individual, whether they're getting money from Social Security, whether they're getting, SSI or working or whatever, they're funding money into the ABLE account that way.
I had another question here too.
Yeah.
What can a special needs trust money be spent on that doesn't impact benefits?
So again, just about anything. The only trigger there is that housing thing. I mean, everything else pretty much falls. Like Craig was joking around with the whole Mercedes and Ferrari thing or whatever he was saying, but literally, the trustee can approve purchasing a vehicle for the individual if it's merited. If hey, I'm trying to get to work, I need a vehicle. It's going to do that, or transportation to do that. That's an acceptable expense that the trustee can approve. You're
Yeah,
probably not going to approve. Go ahead.
I'll just say, I just don't know if the person who has a disability can own the asset. So they could purchase it for their or buy benefit for their use, but they couldn't buy them a house and put it in their name. That'd be an
Right.
asset. It'd be over that. They couldn't buy them a Mercedes and put it in their name,
Correct.
but buy them the services that they need to get back and
Correct.
forth.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what I meant. The whatever Uber type of thing or whatever it is, or the transportation of movement, that type of thing. That can certainly be approved as part of it. But it's just
Oh,
about anything.
and it's funny because we're getting Googled as we're talking, so that's great. I love that. So I just looked up Mass 529A online. It says that the able accounts can be up to $500,000. That is correct if you're not on benefits. If you're using SSI or Medicaid, then the limit is 100,000. They're going to shut your benefits off once you're over $100,000. If you're not taking any government benefits like we talked about before, but you do have a disability, you can still do the able, and yes, you can accumulate up to $500,000 in that account.
Right.
That is absolutely true. So it's just a matter of whether you're trying to protect yourself from benefits or not.
Right. And then just make sure when you're doing any of that research that you're not, sometimes they commingle the college funding accounts with ABLE and give you both as part of it. So just make sure that when you're doing it, that it might give you, hey, the 529 college savings plan allows you to put this amount in, or whatever that number is. And then, down below it might tell you a little bit about ABLE. So just be aware sometimes if you're doing that.
This one is true, though. I'm aware of this one. I've had several conversations with other people about it. So it's just most of the time
Yeah.
we're talking about people who are collecting some kind of benefit. So,
Correct. Right. The 100,000 is just the threshold on that. And again, if you're going to be putting $500,000, we think you're better suited to put the 500,000 into probably a supplemental needs trust versus an able account, but that's just a different conversation.
well, yeah, like I said, it depends. Everything is so individualized. Like I said, and when someone asked me another question we talked about earlier is why would someone not getting SS want an able account? Well, because what you have is a super Roth, right? It grows tax free and comes out tax free. So, that's just, that if you have a disability and qualify for the able, that's just a reason to do it. Now, once again, you can't contribute to a 401k or IRA at
Right.
the same time you're putting into the able. You got to choose your poison here, but there could be some benefits to that. It's like I said, it depends on the individual.
Yeah. And again, it all comes down to that because that was another conversation that came up that was like 2 weeks ago or so. The family wasn't sure that the child was even going to apply for benefits because the diagnosis wasn't that, you know, that
The
more than
borderline.
likely she was going to be able to go out and work and do other things and wasn't going to need to qualify for benefits. So then there's no point in terms of trying to protect some of that.
Well, especially in the autism world, because like they're used to call it a spectrum, and it's true because some people can have severe autism and some people can have working autism. Like you'd hardly know they have it, but they have social issues, they have some other underlying issues, still qualify for an ABLE, even though they might not qualify for SSI or SSDI. So once again, if it's just another way, to take advantage of that system, if you happen to be in that position to, another tool
Right.
that may be usable.
Yeah, and speaking of tools and places you can go, so these are some different places to get information on ABLE accounts, different resources. You get the ABLE National Resource Center. This will give you some of that information that the Google. If you're going to Google, go go here to Google in terms of. And like I said, you can go to MIFA and Mass Education Finance Authority for Attainable. That's their one as far as going through that. Just be aware you don't have to worry about trying to copy this stuff down because we're going to get the recording out to you. So then you can just take a screenshot at that time and go through it. But there's some different resources for you. Craig had mentioned that, listen, part of what we do is we make ourselves available for each and every one of you. So if you do have individual questions, if there's some of this stuff that's like, okay, I want to dive a little bit deeper, or I got to get a little bit more information, if you set up a time to meet with us, there's no cost. It's complimentary. We do this for a lot of different organizations, so we're happy to do it for anybody who's on the call with us, or if you're listening to the recording, now's the time to pause it. See that QR code, take your phone out, shoot the QR code. It's going to open up our calendar. Schedule a time. Whatever's convenient for you, we're happy to have that conversation, see if we can answer some of those questions, go through it. I don't know if Melanie dropped the
She
link in the
just did.
chat box. The chat box, and if you check the chat box, the link is there. You can just click on the link. It'll do the same thing if you don't want to try to figure out how to shoot the QR code with your phone.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
And once again, like I said, this is so individualized from person to person and how you use it and what you use it with. It's a great idea to have a conversation with somebody who knows this stuff just to kind of hone in on what's going to be the best strategy. There's one thing
yeah,
to know the tool exists. It's another way to learn how to apply it to a situation to make it benefit you the best way. So,
right.
yeah.
And that was everything that we had. Craig, any other questions for us that we missed in the chat box? Or feel free to drop them in the chat box right now. We're happy to take some questions while we're here.
Sure. I have another one. We didn't miss it. I'm just waiting for, like I said, the right time. Is there a limit to what can be in the special needs trust?
No. No, there's not a limit in terms of amount, and there's not a limit pretty much depending on, who sets it up. They can hold just about anything. We talk about real estate, the home itself being in there, retirement accounts, stocks, antiques, art, just about anything can be held in a special needs trust. The
Yeah,
problem
whether
with
it
that
should be
is,
or not,
sorry,
right?
Craig.
No, go ahead. I'm saying whether it
Yeah,
should be or not, that's another question, right?
exactly. That's the problem is, some of that stuff is like, well, wait, then somebody's got to have to deal with it and sell it or track it or figure it out. And that's where the problem comes in for a lot of folks.
So just going to make a suggestion. I'm getting a few more questions in the chat box, more individualized. I don't know if you want to stop the recording at this point, and then we can continue to answer questions.
Okay, I
Yeah.
can do that.
So the other question